Welcome to Let's Talk About Conflict with your host, Lynne Nash.
Hello and welcome back. It is Let's Talk About Conflict, and I'm your host, Lynne Nash, attorney mediator in the lovely state of Texas. I am an attorney, but not yours. This is the podcast where we talk about skills for dealing with conflict. And majorly, we talk about how to be a better communicator so that if you find yourself with conflict, you might have some ways of either making it less problematic or potentially making the conflict come to a better resolve. So with that, today, we are going to talk about the power of silence. I do teach in a master's program, and inevitably, I talk to my students about how valuable the silence is. Now, in other cultures, that's not necessarily true. But in the United States, knowing how to utilize silence is so valuable. So let's start with this. Thaler and Koval wrote a book called The Power of Nice, How to Conquer the Business World with Kindness. And they say it this way: shut up and listen. Shut up and listen. In academia, we discuss the skill of active listening. But to be an active listener, to put it bluntly, we all kind of need to shut up and listen, not hear, listen. Okay? So let me clarify that statement and be really, really direct. Hearing is a physical experience that your body can receive sound waves through your eardrum, which over time have been learned and translated into information by your brain. We hear the rustle in the trees, the leaves rustling in the trees. We hear a dog's bark. We understand that's the sound of a dog barking and not a chicken. But we hear people speak and learned language as a child to make meaning from the specific sounds. If you are a dual language speaker, you recognize that sound and that word in this language means this, but over here, if you kind of make a sound like that, maybe it means something else. Listening is a skill. Hearing is a physical experience. Listening is a skill. Listening is the process of receiving, interpreting, evaluating, recalling, and responding to verbal and nonverbal messages. Okay, listening. Now, if listening just takes the ability to listen and kicks it up another notch. Just go on and take it up another notch. To participate in active listening, you need to be able to give your speaker your full attention. Yeah, let me say it again. To participate in active listening, you need to be able to give your speaker your full attention. And that means maintaining eye contact and showing open body language that demonstrates engagement and being truly attuned to just what that person is speaking about. An active listener's goal is to understand and retain what the speaker's message is. Okay, so hearing, we hear all the time. Listening, well, we sort of get it. Active listening is a very specific thing. So when you're focusing solely on the person speaking, you are participating in the active listening. That means you are not making lists of what you need from the grocery store. You're not planning what you want to eat for lunch. You're not thinking about that next call or that next meeting or that next blah, 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 blah. We've all been there. That's listening. We listen and we have all this noise going on in our head. We've all been there. If you have that background noise going on in your brain, you are listening, but you are not active listening. And trust me when I say the people around you can tell. People can tell when you're actually listening or not. Have you ever noticed at this point when you're checking out of a lane at a grocery store or something where there's actually someone checking you out, they don't even make eye contact with you anymore because they don't think you're going to make eye contact with them. They don't think you're listening to them. They're not interacting. It's really getting kind of crazy out there. Pay attention to that stuff. It matters. So if we're talking about the power of silence in this podcast, then why, Lynn? Why are you focusing on listening? Okay, here's the secret. What's to be heard in silence? That is me pausing for silence. What's to be heard in silence? So much gets said by everyone else in the room when you can internally and externally focus on keeping silent. Okay, why do you want to be silent? You can gain information. Silence is one of the best tools I've ever found for gaining information. Now, I live in the United States, and our culture in general does not embrace silence. Okay? Most Americans, they're not comfortable in silence. It feels awkward. So if I find I can ask an open-ended question, open-ended questions always begin with who, what, where, when, why, how, open-ended question, and then just be quiet. People will talk, and then they finish a little quip, and you have to force yourself to remain quiet. And then they will probably talk some more. When there's just a whole lot of value in being silent. You can be silent and you can ask those opening questions. You're going to gain information from them. Number 2, you can learn about someone else. It is very hard to learn about an other if you're talking. That's funny to talk about being silent on podcasts because I can't exactly demonstrate that when this is truly a podcast. But Larry King, a very famous interviewer, for the youngs out there who don't know that it is, just look him up. He said this. It's really, really great. He said, my first rule of conversation is this. I never learned a thing while I'm talking. I never learned a thing while I'm talking. So to have a good interview, to have a good conversation, just listen. Just stop talking and stop thinking about yourself. So you can take this one step further. How do we learn anything about someone else if we're busy filling in the quiet? Embracing the silence and letting someone else talk about themselves or whatever else will leave the other person in the conversation feeling heard. They'll feel respected. And sometimes you'll leave them with this desire to help you out. It's kind of crazy. I hate to put this out there. No, I don't. I'm going to put it out there. One of my number one very best networking tips when I talk to undergrads or law students who have really never done any networking, they're trying to figure out how to do this. And it's a skill. I mean, you can learn to network. It's a skill just like any other. One of my very favorite networking tips is this. Meet someone and ask the person you met about themselves. Oh my gosh. And then just listen. And then keep them talking about themselves. And they will think you are wonderful. Own the silence about you. You don't want to talk about yourself. Let them talk about them. Make a connection where you can here and there. Give them the floor, so to speak. Works like a charm. They will think you are wonderful. They will think you were brilliant. And you kept your mouth shut. Then again, there's always that old saying that says, better to remain quiet and let people assume you know what you're doing than to open your mouth and prove you don't. Yeah, that gets said a couple of different ways, but the end result's always the same. Being quiet typically helps. So if you're in a conflict, like a negotiation, okay, we should use a negotiation as a complex example. Try being quiet. Let silence fill the gaps where words won't. I promise you, the more you remain silent and really listen to the person you're engaging with, the better you will be at understanding what you can use as leverage to help solve the conflict, what you can use as an incentive for that person to help resolve conflict. It's just really valuable and it makes people feel very connected to you. If this conflict is at its core something about their ego, the other person's ego, is this conflict about a need the other person has? Is this conflict about a fear? Are they under a time crunch? Are they having family pressures? All of these different elements may come to the surface if you can just remain quiet and listen. I in the class I teach, I always encourage my students about week 2 to practice this being silent, to just start a conversation with someone and then just stop talking and wait for them, see if they'll fill in gaps or see if they'll ask questions back or see what the other person will do with it. It never fails. They come back and they're like, I couldn't believe how much I learned just by being quiet. So Remember, I started off with this wonderful book called The Power of Nice and How to Conquer the Business World with Kindness. And they literally have a chapter called Shut Up and Listen. I'm not going to say that, but we do kind of need to do that. We need to listen, we need to actively listen, not just hear. Okay. And to do that, we got to get silent. We've got to embrace the power of silence and embrace the power of letting the other person you're in a conversation with be in the driver's seat. Okay. It's really hard, especially for extroverts. Just shut it down. Talking from my own personal experience. Yet it's amazing how much it can help a situation. Author said, shut up and listen. I say, be quiet and see what you learn. Do your active listening. Okay. So embrace the power of silence. Send me an email. Let me know if you did this. Let me know how it worked out for you. I think you'll be surprised. Now, if you're in a different culture and that's a whole different thing and silence is acceptable, well, then maybe it's different. But if you're in the United States, give it a whirl and let me know what you think. You can send us an email, and you can also visit our website if you're so inclined to find your way to us. Send us anything you're interested in hearing about. If we think it's something we can talk about, we'll work on it. I am so proud to be part of this podcast, and I love working on this material for you. Hopefully you find these to be useful tips for your life. So with that, again, I'm Lynne Nash. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you down the road.